The wrong key, the wrong floor, the wrong door. I stumbled into the penthouse suite, and my world stopped, because he looked up and his eyes were the kind that never let anything go. My heels were killing me. That's the only thing I could think about as the elevator dinged open on the penthouse floor. I, Zara, was supposed to be in room 1208, but the hotel manager, flustered by the chaos of the art gala downstairs, had pressed a new key card into my hand. An upgrade, Miss Williams, for your trouble. I was too tired to argue, too tired to even look at the new number. I just wanted a bath. I pushed the heavy, dark wood door open. Hello, I called out, expecting an empty, opulent suite. The room wasn't empty. It was vast, dark, and silent, lit only by the sprawling city lights beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. The air was thick with the scent of expensive whiskey and sandalwood. And in a high-backed chair facing the window, a man sat in silhouette. He didn't turn, but the air cracked with tension. I'm so sorry, I stammered, my hand flying to my mouth. The front desk. They gave me this key, they said. My voice died. Two other men who I hadn't even seen materialized from the shadows near the bar. They were dressed in impeccable black suits, their faces like stone. But it was the man in the chair who held all the power. He slowly, deliberately turned his head. Even in the dim light, he was devastating. Sharp, sculpted features, dark hair swept back from his forehead, and eyes so dark they seemed to drink the light in the room. He wasn't surprised. He wasn't even angry. He looked amused. He lifted one elegant hand. The two bodyguards stopped, their hands hovering inside their jackets. My heart hammered against my ribs. A frantic bird in a cage. This wasn't a banker. This wasn't a CEO. This was danger. When was the last time a simple mistake changed your entire life? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more. He rose from the chair, not quickly, but with a fluid, predatory grace that sent a shiver straight down my spine. He was tall. He crossed the space between us, stopping just a foot away. I had to crane my neck to look up at him. I could feel the heat radiating from his body. His voice was a low, velvety rumble. You opened the wrong door, Agassi. I couldn't breathe. I just shook my head. The useless key card still clutched in my hand. He reached out, not to touch me, but to gently take the key from my trembling fingers. His fingertips brushed my palm. A jolt of electricity, cold and hot all at once. He studied the key, then looked back at me, a tiny, dangerous smirk playing on his lips. Room 1208. But you are here. He took a step closer. And now, he whispered, his voice wrapping around me. You are mine. The words hung in the air, a silken, terrifying trap now. You are mine. I let out a laugh, but it came out strained, a high-pitched, nervous sound. Look, I don't know who you think I am, but you're mistaken. It was an accident. I'll go. I tried to step back to pivot toward the door. It was only 10 feet away. Gene Nakamura didn't move a muscle, yet he was everywhere. His presence filled the room. He just watched me, that predator's amusement still in his eyes. You will go nowhere. Please, I whispered, my voice trembling now. This is a misunderstanding. There is no misunderstanding. He tilted his head, his gaze sweeping over me from the beaded strap of my gala dress to my shaking hands. It wasn't a leer. It was an appraisal, like he was examining a piece of art he'd just acquired. You saw this room. You saw me. In my world, Agassi, there are no happy accidents, only consequences. I flinched. I won't say anything. I didn't see anything. Just let me go. I'm just an artist. I'm here for the gala. I don't know you. Or Zara Williams, he stated. It wasn't a question. You are CX. You paint with oils. You prefer the color blue. And you are terrified. My blood ran cold. He knew me. I know everyone who enters this hotel, he said, stepping so close I could see the single tiny mole beneath his left eye. I was forced to look up, trapped between his gaze and the sheer size of his bodyguard's muse. The sandalwood scent was overwhelming, intoxicating. My heart wasn't just hammering, it was trying to escape my chest. I took a sharp breath, trying to find my courage. You can't just keep me. His voice dropped, losing its amused edge and hardening into steel. I am Gene Nakamura, and what I can, I do. He turned his back to me, a clear dismissal. He walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. My legs finally worked. I lunged for the door. I didn't even make it 2 steps before the bodyguards crossed in front of me, blocking the path. The sound, sharp and final, echoed behind me. I spun around. Gene hadn't moved. He was watching my reflection in the glass. He lifted a hand and spoke in Korean to his men. Gunui moden gosawa. Bring everything of hers. He turned his head, his dark eyes locking onto mine in the reflection. Your room, 1208. It is no longer yours. Your things will be brought here. You will stay where I can see you. The hotel room, once a symbol of luxury, had just become a cage. This is insane, I snapped, my voice shaking with a pathetic mix of terror and anger. You can't just abduct me. I'm an American citizen. People know I'm here. My gallery knows. Gene merely lifted an eyebrow. He was back in his chair by the window, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He hadn't touched it. He just held it, the amber liquid catching the light. Your gallery, he said, his voice a bored monotone, believes you are so inspired by your new complimentary penthouse suite that you have turned off your phone to focus on your art. They were very understanding. Ice water sleuthed through my veins. You called them already. I am thorough. My own phone. I fumbled for the small clutch purse I still had slung over my shoulder. It was gone. I dropped it. It didn't matter. One of his stone-faced men was probably wiping it clean as we spoke. What do you want? I demanded, planting my feet. If I was going to be a prisoner, I wouldn't be a cowering one. Money. I don't have any. I'm an artist, not a not whatever you are. This finally brought a reaction. His eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in calculation. He stood up again, and my stupid, traitorous body tensed, half in fear, half in something else. This close, I could see the fine texture of his white shirt, the way it stretched across his shoulders. What I am, he said, his voice dangerously soft, is a man who values privacy. And you, Zara Williams, you saw my face. You saw my men. You stumbled into a meeting you should not have. I cried. Just you and your men. You weren't, I don't know, doing Mafia stuff. He smiled. It was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. Mafia stuff. He savored the words as if they were a new flavor. You watch too many movies. He took a step toward me. I took an involuntary step back, hitting the cold marble of the bar. Trapped. He didn't touch me. He just leaned in close enough for me to see the individual black lashes framing his dark eyes. I don't need money. I want silence. And until I am sure of yours, you are a liability. A beautiful, loud, terrified liability. His gaze dropped to my mouth. My breath hitched. My entire body went rigid. This man was a monster. He was my captor. So, why was my skin tingling? Why was I noticing the sharp, clean scent of his soap under the sandalwood and whiskey? The heavy wooden door opened. Two of his men wheeled in my luggage. My entire life packed into 2 suitcases now delivered to my cage. Unpack, Gene ordered, stepping away. The spell was broken. Make yourself comfortable. You will be here for some time. The suite was massive, all glass and cold marble, but it felt like a shoe box with him in it. For hours, I sat on a plush cream-colored sofa that probably cost more than my apartment while he worked. Gene was at a large mahogany desk, his back to me. He took call after call, his voice a low, rhythmic stream of Korean. It was sharp, clipped, and utterly commanding. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The authority was absolute. His bodyguards were posted outside the suite, but he was the most dangerous thing in the room. I was his prisoner, but he was ignoring me. It was a strange kind of torture, making me feel insignificant and at the same time hyper-aware of his every move. Finally, thirst won out over fear. I needed water. The kitchen area was on the other side of the room, requiring me to walk directly past his desk. I stood, my legs stiff. I moved silently, my bare feet padding on the thick rug. He stopped talking mid-sentence. I froze. Slowly, he swiveled in his chair, his dark eyes pinning me. He muted his call. Do you need something? He asked, his voice smooth. Water, I said, my voice coming out as a croak. He gestured to the kitchen. My home is yours, he said, the irony thick. For now. I hurried to the kitchen, my back prickling, entirely aware of his gaze on me. I grabbed a bottle of water from the massive stainless steel fridge. As I turned, my hand shaking, I let out a sharp yap. He was right there. I hadn't heard him move. I stumbled back, my shoulders hitting the cold metal of the fridge. My heart leaped into my throat. He hadn't moved to threaten me. He was just there, closer than he had any right to be. He reached past me, his arm brushing my shoulder to open a cabinet above my head. His body heat enveloped me, the scent of sandalwood, and something uniquely him filling my lungs. I was trapped between the fridge and his body. "Tea," he murmured, his voice a low vibration that I felt in my bones. He pulled down a small wooden box. He was so close I could see the faint stubble on his jaw, the way his dark lashes cast shadows on his cheekbones. My entire body was a live wire screaming danger at the top of its lungs. But another traitorous part of me was just aware. I was too tired to run, too angry to cower. He stopped just inches away. He didn't reach for me. He just looked at me, his gaze tracing my features as if trying to memorize them. "You are shaking," he observed, his voice a low rumble. "I wonder why," I retorted, though the fight was draining out of me, leaving only a cold dread. "He will come for you," Jean said, his voice soft. "Victor, he saw he will try to use you to break me." "Then let me go," I whispered, the plea tearing from my throat. "Let me go and I'll disappear. I'll never tell anyone. It is too late for that." He lifted a hand and I flinched. He paused, his hand hovering in the air between us. Then slowly, as if approaching a skittish animal, he brushed his thumb over my cheekbone. His touch was shockingly gentle, a callous, warm jolt against my cold skin. "When I saw him look at you," he said, his voice rough, "I wanted to end him. Not for business, not for pride." He met my eyes. "For you." My breath hitched. He was confessing something. He was admitting a weakness. And then his gaze dropped to my lips. The air between us was electric, charged with fear and an impossible magnetic pull. "You," he whispered, "are the most dangerous thing that has ever happened to me, Zara Williams." He leaned in, closing the small distance between us. His other hand found my waist, pulling me against him with a possessive, desperate strength. His kiss wasn't gentle. It was a claim. It was a raw, bruising confession of every bit of tension that had been building since I'd stumbled through his door. It tasted of whiskey, sandalwood, and absolute power. And the most terrifying part, I didn't pull away. The kiss ended, but the charge remained. I was pressed against him, my hands on his chest, my heart hammering a rhythm that was equal parts terror and a wild, undeniable desire. He was breathing hard, his forehead resting against mine, his dark eyes closed as if he was fighting a war with himself. He had claimed me, and I had let him. The beep click of the penthouse door sliding open shattered the moment. We sprang apart. I stumbled back, my lips still tingling, my face flushed. A woman stood in the entryway. She was tall, impossibly elegant, with a sheet of straight black hair and a red dress that screamed money and power. She didn't look surprised. She looked furious. Her cold eyes ran over me, my simple dress, my bare feet, my kissed swollen mouth with pure disdain. Then she looked at Jean. "Jean Appa," she said, her voice a sharp polished blade. "I let myself in. I see you are occupied." "Oppa." The words so intimate, so familiar, hit me like a slap. Jin's entire demeanor shifted. The vulnerability I'd seen, the raw emotion, it vanished. The ice-cold boss was back. His face was a mask of unreadable steel. He didn't look at me. He didn't explain. "Sakura Tanaka," he said, his voice flat. "You should not be here." "Clearly," she scoffed, walking into the room, all ownership and arrogance. "This is your new pet." I thought she was just a witness. "You're messing with her." "Just a witness." Humiliation burned up my throat, hot and acidic. The kiss, his words, "for you." It was all a lie, a game. He was just a monster, and I was just a toy he decided to play with. I couldn't speak. I felt naked, stupid, and utterly broken. "Zara," Jean said, his voice hard. He still wasn't looking at me. He was watching Sakura. "Don't," I whispered, my voice breaking. I took a step back, wrapping my arms around myself. "Don't say my name. I get it. I was just a problem you had to solve, right? Was this part of the solution?" He finally turned his head, his dark eyes flashing. "That is not what this is." "Then what is it?" Sakura demanded, crossing her arms. He looked between us, two women on opposite sides of his world. And he said nothing. That silence was the real betrayal. It was the confirmation. I meant nothing. I was his property, his prisoner, and for a moment his distraction. "Go to your room," he ordered me, his voice devoid of all the warmth he'd shown me moments before. I flinched as if he'd struck me. "Yes, boss," I spat, the word dripping with all my broken pride and shame. I turned and ran, not to the guest room, but to the front door. I didn't care about his men. I didn't care about Mr. I yanked the door open and slammed it shut behind me, the sound echoing the shattering of my heart. I didn't get far. I burst out of the penthouse, my bare feet slapping against the plush carpet of the exclusive hallway. I was sobbing, a raw, ugly sound that was torn from my chest. I felt like the world's biggest fool. I'd fallen for the oldest trick. A pretty cage and a handsome monster. I jabbed the elevator button over and over, my palm stinging. Come on. My blood turned to ice. It wasn't one of the guards. Jean stood at the end of the hall by the open door of the penthouse. Sakura was gone. He was alone, his chest heaving. He had run after me. Leave me alone, I spat, my voice thick with tears. Go back to your business arrangement. She is gone. I don't care, I yelled just as the elevator dinged and the door slid open. I lunged inside, jabbing the button for the lobby. The doors were closing. A hand shot between them, forcing them back open. He stepped inside and shut, and the door slid shut, encasing us in the small golden mahogany box. I pressed myself into the farthest corner, as far from him as I could get. You cannot go down there, he said, his voice a low, rough growl. Watch me. I'd rather take my chances with Victor. At least he's honest about what he wants. You just play games. Was I fun, Jean? Was I a fun witness to mess with? The words hit him. I saw his shoulders tense. He didn't answer. Instead, he slammed his hand against the emergency stop button. The elevator jolted, shuddered, and came to a dead halt between floors. The sudden silence was deafening. What are you doing? I shrieked, a new wave of panic rising. He turned on me. In 2 strides, he crossed the small space, bracing his hands on the wall on either side of my head. I was quiet. His face was inches from mine. His dark eyes frantic, his mask completely gone. She is nothing, he growled. She is a past. I am tied to a duty. She is not this. And what is this? I whispered, my anger trembling. This, he said, his voice cracking, is you in my penthouse, in my head, making me feel anything. Victor will not just break you, Zara. He will destroy you to hurt me. I cannot let that happen. Why? I cried, my own tears blurring his face. Because I'm your property. No, he roared, and the word vibrated through the small space. He leaned his forehead against the wall next to my head, his eyes squeezed shut. Because you are the first thing I have ever wanted to protect, even from myself. He looked at me, his gaze raw, desperate, and stripped of all his power. Do not run from me, Zara, because I will always come after you. Run, and you are prey. Stay, and you are mine to defend. He had made his choice, and now, trapped in a steel box with the most dangerous man I'd ever met, I had to make mine. The emergency stoplight cast a faint reddish glow over his face, highlighting the desperation I'd never believed he was capable of. He was a mafia boss, a monster, but he was also just a man laid bare in a stalled elevator. You're a fool if you think you can protect me, I whispered, my voice trembling. Victor Kozlov, your entire world, it's death. It's darkness. Then be my light, he said, his voice raw. He didn't move, but his eyes pleaded. I am surrounded by darkness, Zara. I have been my entire life. When you stumbled into that room, it was the first time I saw something that wasn't part of it. Something I didn't want to control. I wanted to just have my heart act. He was right. I couldn't run. Victor would find me. And this man, this terrifying, broken man, he wouldn't just wallow. He'd tear the world apart to find me. Slowly, my hands, which had been pressed against the cold wall, found his chest. I felt his heart hammering under my palms just as frantically as my own. This is insane, I breathed. Love is, he replied, his voice. He watched me, giving me all the power. I was the one who leaned in. I was the one who made the choice. I pressed my lips to his, and this kiss wasn't a claim or a capture. It was an answer. It was a surrender from both of us. He let out a breath he'd been holding, and his arms wrapped around me, pulling me away from the wall and into him, into his protection. He reached over my head and pressed the button. The elevator hummed back to life, and we started to ascend back to the penthouse, back to the cage. But when the doors opened and we stepped back into the suite, it didn't feel like a cage anymore. He led me to the sofa, his hand never leaving mine. He sat me down, his eyes scanning my face. He echoed his words from that first night, his voice thick with a new meaning. You opened the wrong door, Agassi. I looked up at him, my eyes clear. Did I? A slow smile, the first real one I'd ever seen, touched his lips. He knelt in front of me, taking both my hands in his. "I told you, now you are mine." It was a threat, an order. He brought my hands to his lips, kissing my knuckles. "Let me say it again." He looked up, his dark eyes holding all the promises of a dangerous future, but a future with him. "Now you are mine, Zara Williams, and I am yours. Do you believe a single mistake, one wrong turn, can lead you to exactly where you were meant to be?" 3 weeks had passed since that night in the elevator when everything changed between us. 3 weeks of living in Jin's world, learning its rules, discovering just how deep the darkness ran. I wasn't naive anymore. I knew what Jin did, who he was, what his empire was built on. But somehow, watching him command respect with just a look, seeing the loyalty he inspired in his men, witnessing the careful balance he maintained between ruthlessness and honor, I found myself not just accepting it, but understanding it. The penthouse had become our sanctuary, a place where the Mafia boss could shed his armor and just be Jin. Where I could paint in the early morning light while he worked at his desk, both of us existing in comfortable silence. Where we could have dinner together and talk about everything except business. Where he could hold me through the night, and I could forget that our world was built on quicksand. But peace never lasted long in Jin's world. I was in the kitchen making tea when Marcus Chin burst through the front door, his usual composed demeanor shattered. His shirt was torn, blood on his knuckles, and his eyes held the kind of fear I'd never seen in any of Jin's men. "Boss," he said, his voice tight. "We have a problem." Jin emerged from his study immediately, reading Marcus's expression like a book. "Victor's moved faster than we anticipated. He's taken 3 of our shipments in the last 48 hours. But that's not the worst of it." Marcus glanced at me, hesitation flickering across his face. "Tell me," Jin commanded, his voice dropping to that deadly quiet tone I'd learned to recognize. "He's got Alexander Kane's people helping him. Kane's betrayed the alliance. They hit our warehouse on the East River 2 hours ago. Took everything, killed 6 of our men, and left a message." Marcus pulled out a blood-stained piece of paper. "He wants to meet. Tomorrow night. Pier 47. He says to bring the artist, or he starts a war that will burn all of Manhattan." The cup slipped from my hands, shattering on the marble floor. Tea spread in a dark stain that looked too much like blood. Jin's eyes found mine across the room, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. Not for himself, but for me. "This is what you were afraid of," I said quietly. "This is why you tried to keep me away." He nodded, his jaw tight. "Victor isn't like the other men in our world. He has no honor, no rules. He will hurt you in ways you cannot imagine, not to get information, but because causing pain is what feeds him." "Then we don't go," I said, moving toward him. "We find another way. There is no other way. If I don't show, he'll declare war on every family in the city. Innocent people will die. My people will die, and he'll never stop hunting you." The weight of it hit me then. How many lives hung in the balance because I'd opened the wrong door? How many people would suffer because Viktor Kozlov wanted to hurt Jin through me? "I can't let that happen," I whispered. "I won't be responsible for a war." "You won't be responsible for anything," Jin said fiercely, crossing to me and taking my hands in his. "This is my world, my choices, my consequences. You didn't ask for this. But I chose to stay," I reminded him. "I chose you. That means I choose your world, all of it. Even this. Even Victor." Jin's hands tightened on mine. "The thought of him touching you, hurting you, it makes me want to burn everything down." "Then don't let him," I said simply. "You're Jin Nakamura. You don't lose." Marcus cleared his throat. "Boss, there's something else. Sakura Tanaka has been spotted in the city. She arrived this morning with a full security detail. Word is she's been in contact with Victor." Jin went very still. "That's impossible. She would never align herself with him. Money changes loyalties," Marcus said carefully. "And Victor has a lot of it now. Plus, she's still angry about." He glanced at me again. "About how things ended." The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Sakura, the woman from his past, the one who'd interrupted our first kiss, was working with Victor. The woman who'd called him Appa with such intimacy was now his enemy. Or maybe she always had been. "How long do we have?" Jin asked, his voice controlled again. "The meeting is tomorrow at midnight. Victor's bringing 20 men. Alexander Kane will have another dozen. And if Sakura's involved, she'll have her own security force. We'll be outnumbered. Not if we're smart about it, Jean said. He looked at me, his dark eyes holding mine. I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Always, I said without hesitation. Then I need you to do exactly what I tell you. When I tell you, no matter how much you want to argue. This isn't a negotiation. Promise me. I promise. The next 24 hours were a blur of preparation. Jin's penthouse transformed into a war room. Maps of the pier spread across every surface. Communication equipment hummed constantly. Men arrived at all hours, receiving orders in low voices before disappearing back into the night. I watched it all, this machine of violence and strategy that Jean commanded with surgical precision. This was who he really was. Not just the man who held me gently in the dark, but the leader who could orchestrate a battle like conducting a symphony. He'd given me a Glock and made me practice with it until my hands stopped shaking. The weight of it in the shoulder holster he'd chosen felt foreign and familiar at the same time. Insurance, he'd called it, but we both knew what it really was. The difference between life and death if everything went wrong. As the sun set on the day of the meeting, Jean found me on the balcony, staring out at the city lights. The same view we'd looked at together that first night, when I'd been his prisoner and he'd been my captor. Now we were something else entirely. Something neither of us had words for. You're having second thoughts? He said, coming to stand beside me. No, I said honestly. I'm having all the thoughts. About how we got here, about what might happen tonight, about what comes after. If there is an after, there will be, he said with the kind of certainty that had built his empire. I won't let Victor take you from me. Not when I've just found you. I turned to look at him. This man who'd changed everything about my life with a single glance. Who'd shown me darkness and light in equal measure. Who'd made me stronger by believing I already was. I love you, I said. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Words I'd never said to any man. Words that felt like jumping off a cliff without knowing if there was water below. Jean went very still. In all the weeks we'd been together, through all the passion and protectiveness and possession, neither of us had said those words. They hung in the air between us like a bridge we'd either cross together or burn. Say it again, he said, his voice rough. I love you, I repeated, stepping closer. I love your strength and your gentleness. I love how you command respect without demanding it. I love how safe you make me feel in a world that should terrify me. I love that you saw something in me worth protecting before I saw it in myself. He cupped my face in his hands, his thumbs tracing my cheekbones. I have killed men for much less than what Victor plans to do to you tonight. I have built my empire on fear and respect and calculated violence. But with you, Zara Williams, I am just a man who loves a woman so much it remakes him completely. He kissed me then, soft and fierce and desperate all at once. Like he was trying to memorize the taste of me. Like he was saying goodbye. When we broke apart, I saw the truth he was trying to hide. He didn't expect both of us to walk away from the pier tonight. This plan of his, whatever it was, required a sacrifice he wasn't telling me about. I won't let you die for me, I said fiercely. Whatever you're planning, whatever stupid heroic gesture you think you need to make, I won't let you. I am not yours to lose. I am yours to live for. Something shifted in his expression. The mask he wore for the world cracked just enough for me to see the man underneath. The one who'd been alone for so long he'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone fight for him instead of just with him. Then we both walk away, he said finally. Together. Together, I agreed. As we prepared to leave for the pier, Jin's men gathered in the living room. 20 of his most trusted soldiers, each armed and ready to follow their leader into hell. Marcus Chun checked his weapon one final time. The others did the same, a ritual of preparation that spoke to how dangerous this night would be. But before we left, Jean pulled me aside one more time. If something happens to me tonight, he began. Nothing will happen, I cut him off. But if it does, he continued, his voice brooking no argument. Marcus has instructions. He will get you out of the city, out of the country if necessary. You'll be safe. I don't want to be safe without you, I said. I want to be free with you. Then stay close to me, he said, checking my holster one more time. Do exactly what I tell you. And remember that whatever happens tonight, you are mine and I am yours. Nothing Victor or Sakura or anyone else does can change that. The ride to Pier 47 was silent except for the hum of the engine and the distant sounds of the city. I sat beside Jean in the back of the armored car, our hands intertwined, both of us lost in our own thoughts. The pier was exactly what I'd expected. Dark, isolated, surrounded by abandoned warehouses that provided too many hiding spots for snipers. The Hudson River lapped against the pilings with a rhythm that sounded like a countdown. Victor was already there when we arrived, flanked by his 20 men as promised. But what made my blood run cold was the sight of Sakura Tanaka standing beside him, her elegant form a stark contrast to the rough men surrounding her. She looked exactly as beautiful and dangerous as she had that night in the penthouse, but now her beauty felt like a weapon pointed directly at us. Alexander Kane stood slightly apart from Victor's men, his own soldiers fanned out behind him. The betrayal was complete. A man Jean had trusted, had worked with, had considered an ally, was now the enemy. Jean squeezed my hand once before we got out of the car. His men took positions around us, but even with their protection, we were still outnumbered almost 2-1. The odds were not in our favor. Jean Nakamura, Victor called out as we approached. You always did have excellent timing. And taste, he added, his eyes sliding over me with a hunger that made my skin crawl. Victor was everything Jean wasn't. Where Jean was controlled, Victor was chaos. Where Jean commanded respect, Victor demanded fear. Where Jean's violence was surgical and purposeful, Victor's was excessive and cruel. Everything about him radiated the kind of evil that destroyed for the pleasure of destruction. You wanted a meeting, Jean said, his voice carrying across the water. Here I am. Yes, but you've brought the wrong gift, Victor replied, gesturing toward me. I asked for the artist, not armed guards. She comes with protection or she doesn't come at all, Jean said. Those are my terms. Victor laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You're hardly in a position to make terms. But I suppose I can be generous. After all, this will be our only conversation. The threat was clear. Victor had no intention of letting us leave the pier alive. But Jean had known that from the beginning. This was never going to be a negotiation. It was going to be a war. And then Sakura stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Hello, Jean Appa. You always did prefer women who didn't know their place. The casual cruelty in her tone made my hands clench into fists. This was the woman who'd shared Jin's bed, who'd known him before I existed, who'd thrown it all away for what? Money? Revenge? The satisfaction of watching him burn? Sakura, Jean replied, his voice giving away nothing. I wondered when you'd show yourself. When Victor explained his plans for your little pet, I simply had to see it for myself. She smiled, and it was like watching a snake prepare to strike. He's going to break her slowly, you know? Every bone, every finger, every beautiful piece of her. And you're going to watch. Until you can't anymore. That's when Victor made his first mistake. He let his guard down for just a moment, too focused on the psychological torture he was inflicting to notice that Jin's hand had moved to the small transmitter clipped to his belt. The pier erupted into chaos. Jin's men, who I'd thought were our entire force, had actually been the distraction. His real army had been waiting in the warehouses surrounding us, and at his signal, they emerged from the shadows like ghosts. 50 men, then 70, then more than I could count. The sound of gunfire filled the night air, muzzle flashes strobing like lightning against the darkness. I found myself pressed against Jin's side as he moved with deadly purpose, his own weapon drawn, coordination his men with hand signals while protecting me with his body. Marcus Chin appeared at our left, his face grim as he took down 2 of Victor's soldiers with precision shots. The battle was brutal and swift, Jin's superior numbers and strategic advantage quickly turning the tide. But in the chaos, I lost sight of the real threat. Sakura had disappeared, and Victor was fighting his way toward us with the determination of a man who had nothing left to lose. That's when I saw her. Sakura, moving through the shadows behind Jean, a knife glinting in her hand. She'd waited for the perfect moment when his attention was focused on Victor, when his back was turned, when she could strike without interference. I didn't think. I didn't hesitate. I drew my weapon and fired. The shot took her in the shoulder, spinning her around, and sending the knife skittering across the pier. She fell to her knees, clutching her wound, her face twisted with pain and rage. Jean spun at the sound of my gunshot, taking in the scene in an instant. Sakura on the ground, my weapon still raised, my hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. You shot me, Sakura gasped, as if she couldn't quite believe it. You actually shot me. I saved him, I replied calmly. which is more than you ever did. Victor's roar of fury cut through the night as he saw his ally down. He turned his weapon toward me, his face contorted with rage. But Jean was already moving, placing himself between Victor's gun and my body. The shot meant for me took Jean in the chest. Time stopped. The world narrowed to the sight of Jean falling, blood spreading across his white shirt, his eyes finding mine even as his knees hit the pier. I screamed, or maybe the sound came from somewhere deeper than my throat, from the part of me that was connected to him, that felt his pain as if it were my own. I dropped beside him, my hands pressing against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding that was too much, too fast. Victor stood over us, his weapon trained on my head. "This is what happens when you take what belongs to me," he said. But before he could pull the trigger, Marcus Chin put 3 bullets in his chest. Victor collapsed beside us, his eyes already growing glassy as life left them. But my focus was entirely on Jean, who was struggling to stay conscious, his breathing shallow and labored. "Stay with me," I whispered, my hands slick with his blood. "You promised we'd walk away together. You promised." "I always keep my promises," he said weakly, his voice barely audible over the sound of sirens in the distance. "Even when it kills me. Don't you dare die on me, Jean Nakamura. I have not learned to live without you. I refuse to start now." He smiled at that, even through the pain. "My fierce artist. My dangerous woman. I knew you were perfect the moment you opened my door." I was crying now, tears falling onto his face as I held him. "You opened my door too. You let me in when you should have kept me out. Best mistake I ever made." The ambulance arrived 8 minutes later. 8 minutes that felt like hours, during which I held Jin's life in my hands and willed him to keep breathing. 8 minutes during which Marcus Chun coordinated the cleanup, ensured Victor and Sakura were secure, and called in every favor Jean had to make sure we could get him to a private hospital where no questions would be asked. 8 minutes during which I learned what it truly meant to love someone so completely that losing them would destroy you. The surgery took 6 hours. 6 hours during which I paced the private waiting room of the medical facility that catered to people in Jin's world. 6 hours during which Marcus Chen brought me coffee I couldn't drink and food I couldn't eat, and updates on the empire that was functioning perfectly without its leader because Jean had trained his people well. 6 hours during which I thought about the man on the operating table and how drastically he'd changed my life. I'd gone from captive to willing participant to partner to the woman who would kill for him and die for him and live for him all at once. When the surgeon finally emerged, his face was grave but not hopeless. "The bullet missed his heart by inches," he said. "We've repaired the damage, but the next 24 hours are critical. If he makes it through tonight, he should recover fully." "Can I see him?" I asked immediately. "He's unconscious, but yes, just for a few minutes." Jean looked smaller in the hospital bed, surrounded by machines and tubes and wires that were keeping him alive. His face was pale but peaceful, and the steady beep of the heart monitor was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. I took his hand carefully, mindful of the 4-line. "You're going to be fine," I told him. "And when you wake up, we're going to talk about this whole throwing yourself in front of bullets thing. Because it's not acceptable behavior for someone who belongs to me." His fingers twitched slightly in mine, and I chose to believe he was listening. Over the next 3 days, I barely left his side. Marcus Chin brought me clothes and updates on the business that Jean ran even in his sleep. The pier incident had been contained, he told me. Victor's organization was in chaos without their leader. Alexander Kane had been found dead in his car, apparently eliminated by his own men when they learned of his betrayal. Sakura Tanaka had been deported back to Korea with a warning never to return to American soil. The war was over before it truly began, and Jin's empire was stronger than ever, unified by the loyalty he inspired and the respect he commanded. When Jin finally opened his eyes on the 4th morning, the first word he spoke was my name. "Zara," he said, his voice hoarse but strong. "I'm here," I said, squeezing his hand. "I'm not going anywhere." "Good," he said, managing a weak smile. "I have a question to ask you. You just woke up from surgery. Questions can wait." "This one can't," he insisted, trying to sit up. I helped him adjust his position, careful of his bandages. "Zara Williams," he said, his dark eyes holding mine with the same intensity they'd had that first night. "You saved my life. You defended our home. You chose me over safety, over logic, over everything that should have sent you running. You are the strongest, most beautiful, most dangerous woman I have ever known. And I am completely, helplessly, irrevocably in love with you. I was already crying, because I could see where this was going. Because even wounded and weak, Gene Nakamura was still the most compelling man I'd ever met. Will you marry me? He asked. Will you be my partner in everything, my equal in all things, my queen in this empire we'll build together? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that the best mistake you ever made was opening the wrong door? Yes, I whispered, and then louder yes. Yes to all of it. Yes to you. Yes to us. Yes to whatever comes next. He reached into the bedside drawer and pulled out a ring that must have been there waiting. A diamond that caught the morning light and threw it back in brilliant fragments. Perfect and dangerous and beautiful, just like the life he was offering me, just like the life I was choosing. As he slipped it onto my finger, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. The wrong door that had become the right door. The captivity that had become freedom. The fear that had become love. The monster who had become the man who would remake himself completely for the woman brave enough to see his heart. 6 months later, we were married in a small ceremony attended only by the people who mattered. Marcus Chin stood as Jin's best man. The few friends I had left from my old life sat in chairs decorated with flowers that Jean had flown in from around the world. It wasn't the wedding I dreamed of as a little girl, but it was perfect for the woman I'd become. Strong, fearless, ready to stand beside a man who ruled with wisdom and loved with passion. As we exchanged vows in the penthouse where our story began, Jean promised to protect me, cherish me, and never keep me from the dangerous, beautiful world we'd chosen together. I promised to stand by him, fight for him, and never let him face the darkness alone again. When he kissed me as his wife, the same applause that had celebrated Victor's defeat now celebrated our beginning. And as we danced to music that played softly through the rooms where I'd once been his prisoner, Jean whispered in my ear the words that had started everything. You opened the wrong door, Mrs. Nakamura. Did I? I replied, just as I had that first night. No, he said, pulling me closer as the city lights sparkled beyond the windows. You opened the only door that could lead you to me. And I have spent every day since thanking whatever twist of fate sent you stumbling into my life. As we swayed together in the golden light, I thought about destiny and choice and the thin line between captivity and freedom. I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago, tired and lost, and looking for nothing more than a bath and a bed. And I thought about the woman I was now, married to the most powerful man in the city, partner in an empire built on respect and fear and love. It wasn't a fairy tale. There would be more challenges, more enemies, more nights when we'd have to choose between safety and each other. But there would also be mornings when I woke up in his arms, evenings when we planned our future over wine and candlelight, and quiet moments when the Mafia boss became just Gene, the man who loved me enough to change the world for me. Do you believe a single mistake, one wrong turn can lead you to exactly where you were meant to be? He'd asked me that first night. Now I knew the answer. Sometimes the wrong door is the only door that can lead you home. Sometimes getting lost is the only way to find yourself. And sometimes the most dangerous choice you can make is the one that sets you free. Like and subscribe for more stories that'll remind you that love can be found in the most unexpected places. And remember, sometimes the best adventures begin with the worst mistakes.